Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's PF, and on today's episode we're going to be checking out some more English whisky. Now, if it hadn't escaped your notice, I'm an Englishman. I do like my Scotch whisky and world whisky, but I do have a bit of affinity now with the emerging market of English whisky. I talked about Gulliver's 47 a little bit on the last video I did of theirs. This is the 4-year ex-bourbon. Now, you won't see the words 4-year written on here, but I know that it is a 4-year minimum. The one I covered a couple of weeks ago, that was their latest release, and that's a 10-year-old quarter cask whisky. So this one is actually their first release. It was released sometime in 2019, so it's been out for a little while now. It's been distilled by the St George's Distillery in Norfolk, who we know as the English Whisky Company. They produce a lot of this English whisky that's kind of the first English whisky in this new wave. There's been English whisky for a long time, but most of them, and all of them in fact, were closed down at some point, and then the English Whisky Company started up the first one in this new wave. We've now got something like I don't even know the number, it must be getting on for 20 or plus. Not all of them are producing whisky right now, or should at least say selling whisky. They've been laying down their barrels, waiting for their kind of 3-year age market. So now we have the Gulliver's 47, which is bottled by Samuel Glover and Co. Now, this is a company that was originally founded in 1747, hence the reason why we have this kind of 47 here, and also a 47% whiskey, which is pretty cool, I think. I like that sort of ABV, getting on for 50, nice. That company did a whole lot of things. It kind of disappeared off in the 50s, and now it's been brought back by the descendants of Samuel Gulliver, who is now bottling whiskey in the form of this. Now, this is a lightly peated whiskey. Very important to know that, because if you're not into your peat, you might not like it, but it's very light peat, as we'll get into when going on. Also worth noting on here is the price. This goes for about £50 to £55, maybe a little bit more depending on when you're looking for it. It's only really available on websites right now. I haven't seen it in any shops, but I'm sure it is in shops, especially in kind of the Norfolk region. Probably even in the distillery where it was made, but I don't know that for sure. So it is an expensive whiskey, but as I talked about in the previous video, which was even more expensive, nearly double, at £100 near enough, this is the kind of price that we're paying right now for English whiskey, because it is such a new thing, and it's kind of getting on for that kind of craft vibe. I know a lot of this is still mass-produced stuff, but when you're paying for craft and you're paying for the kind of English whiskey vibes, while we're still getting the name for ourselves, it is going to cost a little bit more, unfortunately, but we'll get into whether it's worth that sort of money as we get along. Let's get into the actual whiskey and see what we've got, shall we? Now, I am almost certain, as I said earlier, 4-year ex-bourbon. They get those casks from Jim Beam, and they don't break those down at all to rebuild them or whatever. I'm given to believe that this is a first fill, but I don't know that for sure. I'm pretty sure it's first fill, but hopefully, check in the comments below. Maybe somebody from the company will comment on that at some point. I'm also given to believe this is natural colour, because I have to say it's very light, and I like that. You know, it's important to retain that naturalness to it. And if it did have added colour to it, it would seem pretty pointless to leave it so pale. But I believe it's no added colour, as was the other. That one there was a little bit of a deeper colour because it's ex-quarter casks, red wine casks as well, I believe. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get into the nose and see what we've got. Now, right from the off, for me, you're getting this wonderful fruity aroma. There's lots of different fruits going on here. We've got some vanillas going on. There's some orchard fruits, kind of apples and pears, that sort of thing. And a really good punchy, orangey vibe coming, the citrusy vibe at the end. There is a wisp of smoke, but it isn't a lot. It's really light on the nose. Just on the back end, a little bit of kind of smokiness coming through. Let's try on the palate. Now, as you're kind of swishing, chewing, or whatever you do when you're tasting whiskey, you'll notice an initial sweetness, a little vanilla-y sweetness, and then the spiciness comes in. It's kind of a big cinnamon spice, more of those vanillas, more of those oranges, apples, pears, that sort of thing. On the back end, that's when the kind of smokiness is coming through. One more sip. Definitely. It's after the whiskey's gone almost. You're getting this kind of waft of nice smokiness. It isn't like overly earthy, peaty. It isn't medicinal peat. Just a really nice, warming, almost bonfire-y sensation that I find quite enjoyable these days. The finish is not overly long, but it's kind of mediumly long, very spicy, very, very's the wrong word, but it is peaty, kind of smoky on the back end. Again, not earthy, just very warming. I'm really enjoying this. It is a lot of money to ask for a whiskey, but as I said in my previous video, stuff like this is important because we're trying to cultivate a culture of whiskey in England that isn't just Scotch or just bourbon or something like that. And even bourbon is a struggling market in the UK versus Scotch. So I think this sort of thing is important to try, especially if you're into that sort of thing. You know, there's a list of things if you're into, you're probably going to like it. If you like your peat, if you like, dare I say, kind of Speyside, it's very Speyside in nature. But if you like English whiskey in general, then it's worth picking up a bottle of probably this to start with. The other one, although really good, really tasty, a nice 10-year-old, although it is a little bit more, I'm given to understand, a 10-year-old English whiskey, which you don't see much of right now. That is a bit expensive, almost £100, but still worth it if you're into that sort of thing. This one's a bit more reasonable. Forget about the fact that it's no age statement, although it is a 4-year, but forget about that. It doesn't really matter. It's a tasty whiskey, well worth trying, and I think, from my opinion, that it is worth the money.